In Geoffrey Canada's TED Talk speech, Our Failing Schools, Enough is Enough, he addresses the education system and dares them to look at the data, think about the customers, and make systematic shifts in order to help greater numbers of kids excel. Some of his main points from his speech is 1. Technology has changed. Why can't education? He noted that in the 1840s, school was open year-round. He also noted that poor people do not know how important the education is and stimulus is for their children from the time they are born to 3 years old. And last main point is that we need to innovate. One aspect I found from the chapter that was interesting was indirect credibility, found on page 146. Unlike direct and secondary credibility, you develop indirect credibility without using the testimony of authorities or direct personal statements. The speaker, Dr. Canada, uses indirect credibility by developing, supporting, and arguing his claims. He also uses something called message credibility. And that means the more effectively you argue, the more credible you become. He uses outside sources, and he talks about how he went to Harvard, ed school, but then he mocks it, saying that they argued that there wasn't school in the summertime because they go by the agrarian calendar. And then he points out that if you know somebody that farms or know anything about farming, they farm in the spring. In conclusion, I give the speech 10 out of 10. Dr. Canada didn't have to use direct credibility for his argument. He just needed to point out the obvious issues and explain why we need to change our school system so badly. He talked as a parent to parent. He talked as relating to how whenever someone else was young in their day and age, and how he notes that over the last 50 years when he was in school to now, the systems are still the same. And still, a lot of students are still failing. And it's still like the school systems don't change. He also makes an example of when banks used to only stay open from 10 to 3, and they had a lunch break. People were at work during the week. They couldn't make it to the bank. They'd have to take off work just to go to the bank. Well, someone along the way decided, let's change this, and they decided to stay open longer so people could get there, and not to mention, a lot of banks stay open on Saturdays. He didn't need some big, credible source behind him or saying any big names. He just related person to person, and how school and our school systems are an everyday thing in our families. So he points out that this needs to change, and it's working.